good turn 1 plus good turn 2.
There can only be one winner, and you're looking at him. Let's go.
This is literally all you have to do when you work for Konami and you're making decks and you're releasing them in a Duel Links. You have to check off one of these boxes. Tier 0 would probably have a really good turn 1 and a really good turn 2. Konami's got to be careful about mixing these. If they mix a really good turn 1 and 2, then the deck's too good. Usually. The thing with Evil Hero is we don't have a good turn 1, we don't have a good turn 2, and if we can't even have either of these, then we can't even go this. Of course, we're not going to have really good. So usually rogue decks, fun decks, have just a good turn 1 or 2. A top tier deck, I'd say. And when your deck's not top tier, it could at least be cog worthy. And that means you probably just have a good turn 1 or a good turn 2. The thing, Evil Heroes just has nothing. None of this. Nothing. Nada. So if they give us Bane, the deck would still have a bad turn 1. I think the deck would now have a really good turn 2, right? This would be untargetable if Dark Fusion is used. Cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, and it's just the turn it's summoned, it cannot be targetable. Then it could destroy all of your opponent's monsters with less attack or equal to this card's, so face down monsters won't be destroyed. Then it gains 200 for each monster destroyed. That's a really good turn 2, right? That would maybe make it top tier. Bane may be this for Evil Heroes, and the deck would still not have a good turn 1. The turn 1 would still suck, because it's not going to be untargetable if you summon it on your first turn. It will be indestructible by battle or card effects. Is this considered good? A good turn 1? Is this both? Is this considered a really good turn 2 and a good turn 1? Because if you mix and match a really good turn 2 with a good turn 1, that may make it tier 1 or tier 2. What do you think? Is Bane that good? I don't think Bane's a really good turn 1. It could maybe be a good turn 1, right? It's not really good turn 1. So using Onomats as an example, and also Evil Hero, you get to see why a deck is or is not top tier. So let's quickly look at that. Let's look at Onomats. If we look at an Onomat deck list, Onomats have a really good turn 1 with the consistency skill, allowing you to make a very consistent Photon Strike Bouncer to negate anything on your opponent's turn that's an activated monster on their side of the field, plus possibly having back row. And also, I would consider this as part of the turn 1, because think of this like Dark Magician. You set up the navigation and the circle turn 1, then on your turn 3, which is a part of turn 1, you're negating their cards, you're attacking with double Dark Magician. So part of their turn 1 is also using Onomata play on turn 3 to follow up with Gaga Head, which makes your turn 1 even better. If you go first as an Onomat player, you can expect to turn 1 make a Bouncer, and then turn 3 make a Gaga Head, which will be a rank 6 M7 return a monster in the field back to the hand plus lethal damage. That is absolutely insane. That is why they have a really, really good turn 1, but they also have a really good turn 2. Generally, their turn 2 is going to be something like summon a sister or an onomatopoeia, maybe Gaga Bolt, pop a card. They could result in a lethal play on their very first turn going second against a deck. I'm not sure if I would say they would have a really good turn 2. I'd say that Onomats have a really, really good turn 1 into a good turn 2. Now, the Gaga Head, I would say, is a part of their turn 1 play because it is their follow-up by going first. They'll have the Bouncer into a Gaga Head, and that's why Onomats is a top-tier deck, the sole tier 1 deck, and that's why a deck like Evil Hero, not having a good turn 1, not having a good turn 2, and if they don't have a good turn 1 or 2, then they definitely don't have a really, really good turn 1 or 2. So what could make them top tier? We are thinking that Evil Hero, maybe, even with this, may not be enough, is going to need Evil Hero Malicious Bane. This will give them, I think, a really good turn 2, I don't think summoning this turn 1 will be a really good turn 1. It's like a decent, kind of a good turn 1. If you summon this turn 1, it could be 3k defense. It will be indestructible by battle and card effects. If you consider that really good, I don't think it's really good because there are so many ways to out it. But summoning this turn 2, destroy all of your opponent's monsters, and it will be untargetable, indestructible if you use the Dark Fusion to summon it. It will very likely result in a lethal play unless they have a set monster. You're not destroying a set monster. So that is how we figure out generally what makes a deck top tier. When a new deck comes out, ask yourself this. Does it have a good turn 1, including its follow-up play on turn 3? Does it have a good turn 2? Can it be kind of like Resonator, where it could play through a disruption without normal summoning? And otherwise, if they have no disruption, you could summon double Dark End Dragon, double send 2 monsters to the grave, lethal damage. You also have the Doom Dragon Infernity into the Bane, into lethal, 3,500 after dealing damage with the Doom Dragon. That is nuts. Look at Harpies and Resonator and Thunder Dragon. If you look at a Harpy deck, Harpy has a decent turn 1 because they could set up with the Cyber Slash Harpy and then have a spell or trap to trigger its effect to return a monster back to the hand. So it's a pretty good turn 1. I'd say they have a really good turn 2. A really good turn 2, you know that Harpies are very likely going to lethal you with the Harpy Hunting Ground pop in your back row, the Chandler plus the Perfumer when comboed up with a Swallow Nest. This is a really good turn 2 deck with a decent turn 1. And then you look at Resonators. Resonators is a decent turn 1 because you can go up to 2,100 life gained on the first turn. You get 6,100 life, and then with Doom Caliber Knight will make it a really good turn 1, but it's not that consistent because you do have to open up the Wild Wind to even search the Doom. You have to open up one of the 4 cards pretty much to have the really good turn 1, but the really good turn 1 is not that consistent. It's a decent turn 1. It's a great turn 2 deck. This deck is a really good turn 2 because you could make a Dark End Dragon to send a monster your opponent controls without normal summoning. So you could very easily make a double Dark End Dragon for lethal. You could send 2 cards, the first one without summoning, so you could play through Disruption. That's why this deck is top tier. Thunder Dragons has a good turn 1 because they could make a Bouncer. I don't think it's as consistent as Automats. Do they have an as consistent good turn 1, a really good turn 1, which is Bouncer? The Automat deck, I think, will make Bouncer more consistently, possibly. You let me know if I'm wrong on this. And the Automat deck is more likely going to be able to set back row with the Bouncer, right? They play more back row, triple book, Fiendish Chain. So the Automat turn 1 Bouncer is a bit better. And the turn 2 at this deck is great, because they could set up, they could Levineer you by turn 2 possibly if they get quite lucky and they get poppin'. They could even make an M7 possibly, then lethal you alongside the Lupine. They have a pretty good turn 2. Now, there are so many other factors with top tier decks like the grind factor and having hand traps and being able to stall the duel. But I do believe generally a top tier deck ticks off one of these 3 boxes or ticks off multiple of them. And that's why Evil Heroes right now is not top tier, and I would say not even cog worthy. Not even worthy to be called a rogue deck. So let's look at the website real quick of a Evil Hero deck. So here's Evil Hero deck. What are you doing turn 1 that's so good? With the skill, you could search for the fusion spell, but fusion summoning's not good because summoning this turn 1 is just not good. It does nothing. Your opponent just can't enter the battle phase unless they deal with this card, and it's easily dealt with. There's no good inherent protection or good turn 1 play with the deck. The best thing is going to be like a regular Masked Hero deck. Maybe just summon a Stratos and an Edge and really hope you have a Mass Change. Hope you have a Treacherous, but any deck could play Treacherous. So if the baseline is hoping you have Treacherous, any deck could play that. So it does not even have a good turn 1. And then turn 2, it maybe has a decent turn 2 if you have Dark Fusion to make the 3,500 be untargetable, but you're not even threatening lethal with this play. So it's not even a good turn 2. The deck doesn't really threaten lethal consistently, and it doesn't have a good turn 1. No good turn 1, no good turn 2. That is why Evil Heroes is not top tier. But you can let me know if we get Bane. That's going to be a really good turn 2. With Dark Fusion, untargetable the turn it's summoned. Cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. You summon this against a Harpy deck. Let's look at a Harpy deck. They can't Book of Moon it. They can't Treacherous it. They can't Cyber Slash Harpy it. And the Bane will destroy all face-up Harpies on the field. And because it does not use up your normal summon, your Hero Stratos plus the Bane could maybe go for lethal. Maybe go in for lethal. The Stratos could be targeted by their back row Book of Moon. So even with this card, lethal will still probably be stopped. And if you're going first against the Supreme King, you're going to know that Bane's going to be summoned. So you're probably just going to set a monster. Set a monster in back row, survive the Bane summon. Then when the Bane is targetable on the next turn, just flip it down or use one of your back row cards. So even then, that's why I think that Bane could come. It's not going to be that broken. If you summon Bane against a Resonator deck, they are not going to be able to book. They're not going to be able to activate any of these cards, but they're going to be 6,100 life or higher, so they're very likely not going to be lethaled. And then, after they survive the Bane, they're going to very easily on the next turn make a Dark End Dragon and send the Bane to the graveyard, and then the Bane's dealt with. That's it. Then the deck falls apart, kind of, unless you have back row with this and maybe summon another Bane next turn. Now, if you summon Bane against Thunder Dragons, they don't really commit to the field. They're going to have hand traps. The Bane gets hit by a Sphere Kribo. And then on the next turn, yeah, you can't Levineer the Bane, but you could very easily make an M7. M7 will return the Bane back to the extra deck, and then you lose. So, Konami, if you're listening, give us the Bane. I just outlined why the Bane's not even going to be that good, all right? And then Onomat, same thing. They will M7 the Bane. They could, what the heck, Excalibur. They could M7 or Malevolence send the Bane off the fields. So give us the Bane. Let me know in the comments, also the Twitch chat. Should they give us Bane? And this video is why Evil Hero is not top tier. Not a good deck, but we're still trying. Copium. But there are things to look forward to. Let's go.